Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Delighted to be back, January 2024. And I've a gorgeous guest with me today, a beautiful lady. I think I just really got to know in the last, or getting to know in the last few months. And I just think the interview today is going to be so interesting and enlightening and helpful. And I was just thinking about it before we started. And, the start of a new year for many of us, we have lots of, often new resolutions and dreams and hopes, and that's great, whether you do or you don't. But as the month goes on, we can often start to feel a little overwhelmed. I know I often do, and sort of, oh my gosh, look at, am I going to be able to do all of this, or have I taken on too much? So I think today's guest is going to give us some really useful support and tips and insights into how we can do that, as well as many other things, but to help ourselves sort of navigate life in a way that is supportive and allows us move through whatever is coming up for us day to day. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Charlotte Tedds from Lincolnshire in the UK on the East Coast. Charlotte, isn't it? I'm sorry to say I had to look it up on the map exactly to see where it is, but it looks beautiful. And Charlotte, just say a few words and let her introduce herself. But Charlotte, her background is in podiatry for over 20 years. And then over time, she has moved into trauma work, and she works with integral eye movement therapy, somatic therapy, and TRE, which I had a session with her last week, and we can sort of talk through that. So welcome, Charlotte. Just really happy to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Celine. And yeah, just thank you for inviting me and allowing this opportunity to have a conversation about the topic of embodiment and any way that we can share and this conversation to help people learn about how they can relieve stress and tension and
we all need
anything
that,
else
don't
that
we?
comes up. Yeah.
I know I do.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And can you just start by sharing maybe how you started in podiatry and then you moved after a number of years more into trauma work and support. Can you just talk a little bit about why and how that happened?
Yeah, so I've worked I worked in the NHS uh, for about 7 years and then moved to West Australia and worked in private practice there and then set my own practice up over there. And in that journey really kind of established a lot of what I was seeing. The cause of the problem was chronic stress of some degree, coming from multiple angles, and working in the NHS. I did feel quite I won't say disempowered, but you're quite restricted with what you can or can't do because of that kind of the way that it's set up. And so private practice was an attractive option because you can bring all your different modalities and ideas as long as you're staying within a safe remit. Whereas with the NHS, you just you had to go through all these loops to prove this and prove that, and I felt there was a lot more things happening, I guess at a quicker pace. So moving to Australia really opened my eyes to this practice and really started to excuse me, bring in different modalities that would calm the things that I was seeing in the lower limb and calm the nervous systems of people. So I started looking into acupuncture, massage, mobility, mobilizations, movement, yoga. It was just all these different movement and mobility, natural ways that we could reduce stress. But it was only I guess my pivotal point was when I came across a book written by Thomas Hanna called Somatics, And it was, for me, it was quite a paradigm shift in, because what this book was describing was, our bodies will adopt these postures and these presentations unconsciously, depending on the type of emotional stress that we've come across in our lives. And just reading this book, it really made sense, because I had this catalogue of clients that I'd seen, and you're doing gait analysis and watching the body postures and trying to figure out, why they're getting this pain. And I could really resonate with these types of postures that were, the two main ones that he would describe was, you get a very erect, upright body, one that's been used to fighting, not physically fighting so much, but having to fight their way emotionally through and stand up for themselves. And then you get the suppressive posture, which, kind of, I think I've naturally adopted over time. Your shoulders are down, and these kind of muscle patterns that would hold the body in that position. So then I started to study anatomy trains, which is a fascial body release, and that really does look at the body postures and breaks it down to a more finite level. And again, and then it just opened up this path of then how all these postures come about, and the nervous system, the network, and how it's detecting it, which is basically through our fascial network, and that it detects 90% of emotion.
And can you just describe, sorry, just for anyone, the fascial network is just under the skin, isn't it? Is it sort of the tissue just?
Yeah, so it's actually been described as now the richest kind of organ in our body, over the skin and the eyes. It encompasses everything in our body, the cell, from a cellular level, around every muscle fiber, bone, tendon, it's everything. And I guess once I started to really learn that this is our life system, this is how we detect what's going on in our environment. It's our information, really, where we're getting it all from. My whole kind of work changed, and really just went down studying then into trauma, and really, I guess that, as Bessel van der Kolk will say, the body keeps the score, which basically it's all in the body.
Yeah. Isn't it, they say the issue in the tissues, I've often heard said.
Yeah.
The issue.
Yeah.
I love that, because that sort of describes it, doesn't it?
That's right. That's right. And then, yeah, I kind of thought, I feel quite limited in podiatry. It was great in what I was doing, and I enjoyed it, but I just wanted to just focus on and particularly what's happened in the last 3 years. It really made a shift for me to go, this skill is needed elsewhere.
Yeah. And did you notice in podiatry being around, isn't it, the foot and the lower limb, but you were still picking up on the greater body sort of sense? It wasn't just, was it just the people were coming to you and physically, was the stress that you would notice it was presenting in their, in their limbs, or you'd start to notice more about the whole person and body, or get into a conversation that you'd say, okay, there's something else going on. They didn't just fall and hurt their leg, or
because that injury, there's three I guess people are either overstressing their bodies through life because they're busy, and it's not knowing where their body is for a period of time before that overstress happens. Or you've got the other end where people are in this kind of functional freeze and don't want to move, or through lack of confidence, you depression, all those kind of things. And so the tissues are becoming weaker. And so you've got this either too much or too little. And I myself have been on that too much, you know, through injuries. I remember physios and health professionals saying to me, you know, you just need to relax, Charlotte. You know, your muscles are so tight. And so I'd do all these relaxing things, what I thought was relaxing and taking it a bit easier, but not knowing that there's a blueprint running through the system from, you know, your experiences in childhood, any shock traumas you might have had, or and then chronic stress in life. And then the body's actually in this survival adaptation of it's operating you. And unless you kind of start to understand how all that works, the going and relaxing is not gonna cut it. And going for the massages is, you know, it's all quite superficial. So it really opened up, and particularly getting back to your question with podiatry, I'd see an injury but always be looking at that posture. You know, first of all, what is this global posture presenting with? Gives you an idea of the energy levels, you know, and really a lot of the things that were happening in the foot often were being caused by postural imbalances from higher up in the body, and just looking at it holistically all the time rather than this, you know, it's just the foot that I'm looking at.
And isn't that seem to be, like you said, even in the last few years, it's become, I think, even more obvious. We can't just, I mean, it's always been my, let's say, not issue, but I had to come to this myself through going through cancer, that you cannot deal. We are not, you know, one-dimensional beings. We have many dimensions, and every time, you know, we try and put a band-aid over one part, you know, it's going to come out somewhere else, isn't it? Until we sort of take back our power and start to, I think it's a big part of that. Like, did you find that when you were people coming to you, did they start to open up? Is that what sort of started to happen as well? Did you find conversation started and then you could start to piece together? Maybe
100%.
Yeah.
100%. As soon as you start to I mean, fundamentally, what you know, when you start to learn this and the power of the vagus nerve and you know, polyvagal theory, you may be familiar with, and understanding how this sixth sense in our nervous system operates, just by making sure that you are nurturing that in yourself and the person you're interacting with, allows a level of safety to appear unconsciously in the nervous system, and that allows an unfolding in people. And then obviously you start getting into, so that's kind of the groundwork of allowing the safety to even allow to unfold before you even approach the conversation of, you know, what those postures might be implying. So
can you talk a little bit about the vagus nerve? Sorry, because I studied craniosacral therapy for a short while. I went sort of up to, a number of years ago, and I seem to sort of, I don't know why, but I sort of started over the years, probably dipping into, as we all do, as we go through life, and we say certain things aren't working for us, and we might dip our toes into different things. And I actually found that I started to get a little bit, maybe I wasn't ready, a little bit nervous, going, oh, I don't know if I can go there. So I always seem to go halfway into something and then nearly pull back or it was now a little bit of fear of my power. I don't really fully understand. Maybe there was a lot of healing I had to do personally before maybe I could go and work with people. But I do remember the power. I did a lot of the first stages. So craniosacral therapy is, again, you know, the issues are in the tissues and sort of very light touch, and sort of how you're just, feeling into maybe what's, I suppose, emotionally, the body starts to energize energetically nearly talk to you and release just from your intention. But the vagus nerve came up in that. It's sort of that one large, isn't it? The nerve. Just maybe if you can talk a little bit about that in the multivagal.
Yeah, polyvagal. Yeah, so
polyvagal. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so polyvagal was discovered by Dr. Stephen Porges, and the vagus nerve is our, I guess, the nerve which is detecting 80% of what's coming from the body, and it's telling the brain what's going on. But it's also, which is that, this fascial sensory information that we're getting. But it kind of, it basically, there's two parts to the vagus nerve. We have one that comes out of the brain, and it goes down the spine into the, kind of innervates the gut, and that is our survival part of the nerve. So that detects if we, I guess in an emergency, we need to, whether you're fainting or there's a stressful situation, that one comes on board. But then we get one that comes to the front side from the brain, and it supplies our face, our eyes, our jaw, our voice, our lungs, heart, and the stomach, and that is the one that's detecting this kind of social, our environment, and it allows us to either be sociable or receive a sociable situation. And it also detects if something's not safe, and then allows us to respond in a way where we don't feel safe. So it's happening on such a quick rate that I can't remember the actual figures, but it's our facial features are responding much quicker than before our mind consciously figures out what's going on. So when I learned that, I kind of thought, wow, you can see why people's social interactions can go south quite quickly when we're not aware of how this face is maybe displaying to people. And just unpicking that, for me personally, was a journey. It took me a long time to do my work. So my vagus nerve wasn't irritating or sending unintentional signals to somebody else's vagus nerve.
So you're saying like it instinctively, as a protection, will almost show on our, before we've had time to think, that person will pick up very quickly from us. Yeah. There's something that we're not feeling safe with them, or is that
That's
what
right.
Yeah.
And that and how we respond then comes from our childhood experiences, whether we've had a shock, injury in our time, and that might have made us a bit more hypersensitive to react unconsciously. So there's this unconscious patterning that many people aren't aware that's even there. Not that it's a blame and we're broken or anything. It's a survival adaptation, and and then you've got another nervous system that then might be hypersensitive to things because they've had to be to survive. And it's then the more I learned about it, the more I just was pushed towards embodiment, because I thought, really, if we are sending signals on this pre-verbal level, then I'd like to learn more about that.
Okay. And is it, they say the age, is it 0 to 7? I think where a lot of this, this patterning that you're talking about, is a lot of it formed then. I think, we often see that, don't you? I'm sure I have done it. You're acting out of your 5-year-old, like having nearly a tantrum or running away, but is that, I think that's really helpful to know. So a lot of this is formed then from our experiences, aren't they, as a child? the
Yeah,
survival
yeah,
mechanism.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I,
100%.
yeah. And the trauma, when we hear so much about trauma now, and I suppose one thing that has really helped me, isn't it? Can you just talk a little bit exactly about what trauma is and how, because, often I think we can associate it with being something huge that happens in our lives, well, nearly I used to feel that as well. Oh, I'm not traumatized because I didn't have a major happening. So how would you describe trauma um, in terms of like what it is and how it can affect
Mm.
us?
Um, I mean, there's lots of definitions out there, but to keep it simple, it's and when we're looking on this body level of the body is sensing this information,
Mm-hmm.
it's anything where the body has had that sense that it doesn't know that everything's going to be okay, and that can come from so many angles. Um, the main ones are, if obviously the main one is lack of protection. Um, if you've got lack of resources, um, lack of information, and those set up the foundation for that body thinking, I just don't know if I'm going to be okay. Now that can come on different scales, so that's when people describe the big T and the little t.
Okay.
um, and so that I don't think I'm going to be okay can scale up and scale down. Equally, you can have the little feelings of I'm not going to be okay, and it can go over years. And so the entry of how we experience this is just so varied.
Hmm. Yeah. And the different sort of really interested, when you said you got in then to more embodiment and somatics through like Thomas Hanna and that sort of work. Can you describe some then of the sort of modalities you use now to support people? Because you said you sort of shifted from podiatry to more. Do you still do podiatry work as well, or is it more
No, not
moved?
anymore
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I used to do specialize in more barefoot rehabilitation, so that I still kind of I live through that in my own body, and anybody that kind of I meet that needs help, then that kind of, because it's a natural, a lot of it's exercise and self mobility and anything self empowerment really
Mm,
to
mm,
gain that freedom and strength in the foot is
mm.
um, yeah, something that I still do, but not on a I advertise as this
Yes, yeah.
anymore.
But yeah, I'd
But
love to hear. Yeah.
in answer to your question, yeah, so um, I initially did a yoga instructor course, just to kind of be able to just see how the yoga world was operating in terms of trauma sensitivity. And it allowed me to, I guess, become qualified in running a group of some kind. But I didn't find yoga as trauma sensitive as I guess I'd was envisaging. So just started to do that myself with clients in podiatry. We just do, just one-on-one, almost like yoga therapy, really, yin
Yeah.
yoga. And because it was all there to calm the nervous system, to help their lower limb condition, and obviously a lot of it came from life. So, we came in that at that holistic level. Then I went on to do embodiment coaching, and really that allowed me to understand all the different modalities and things that are out there.
How does that
Um,
work, Charlotte? I hadn't really heard of embodiment coaching, so
well,
can you just
initially I
kind of.
took the journey to learn for myself the different things that were out there, and just really, really enjoyed the journey and the uncomfortable moments of exploring all these um, movements that was new to me, and some are and then you kind of learn the things that you're comfortable with is because it's your patterning. But we was encouraged to do the things that were unfamiliar and uncomfortable to us. And I found that was a big release, energetically, kind of in a safe way, embarking in things that were uncomfortable for my patterning.
Okay. And is this through the embodiment coaching? It's just I hadn't heard of, is that where you'd have a session with someone on a, is that what you mean? Like you'd actually work with someone as an embodiment coach?
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
can work one-on-one with people or in groups. And but even with that, alone, I still didn't feel I had enough,
Mm.
I guess, experience in embodiment to start teaching it. So
Okay.
I took it as an opportunity to kind of embrace the unknown and just embody this journey, really. And I thought,
Okay.
well, when I feel ready to teach,
Mm.
I'll know that in my body. So again,
Mm.
I just started then to use my body as that deciding, my whole paradigm changed with the decisions I was making then. Um,
And it,
and then I went into study. Sorry,
no,
sorry.
no, no, it's all right. No, just it struck me there is that, isn't it with all of this work, what I'm coming to see as well is that everything, we've been conditioned to be so in our heads all our lives that really the shift
Mm.
I feel that is happening, it's been happening for myself, but I think it's that's how we come back into our power, isn't it? Is coming back into our body. I think we've been conditioned not to believe our body. We've been conditioned to stay in our heads, and the whole world is very mental. But in that way, you're very easily disempowered, aren't you? Whereas coming back into your body, to me, that's the shift back into your power, coming out of your head and into your body. Does
Yeah,
that
yeah.
sound?
And
Yeah.
you've explained that really beautifully. Yeah, it is.
Mm.
And even if you don't want to, it's not saying everybody has to go do embodiment coaching
Yeah, I
to
know.
be embodied. This is
Yeah.
this is accessible. It's develop. All I'm interested in is because I guess I've experienced it myself now. Then you can pass that empowerment on to others and to know that
Mm,
just by bringing it into your everyday practice or weekly, whatever amount you want to start with,
mm,
and just notice the shifts that can happen in your life because you're starting to become more present. And people talk about
yeah.
mindfulness and things, but embodying mindfulness can come in so many ways.
How
And
would you
that's
describe that?
really
Sorry, embodying
no, it's
mindfulness.
okay.
How would you so could you just sort of
Yeah.
elaborate? So if you're saying, because I know I did courses on mindfulness years ago, but I always felt still there was something missing. Um,
Mm.
so was it more just bringing the attention more deeply into?
Yeah, and it's so mindful. I mean, it is that being present in the moment, but when you're operating from a place of survival stress, and that's where you're living, being encouraged to come into the moment is not easy. And
Mm,
I, experienced that when I first started. It kind of I get quite frustrated, being told you just need to sit, and it's changed a lot now. But when I started, it was just have some moment of peace um and yeah, that for me would you would activate me. I would get quite
mm,
irritable um and then I learned that this was quite normal when for people that have got that survival adaptation and um you know trauma that they're coming from a trauma response in from different angles. And so then that allowed a compassion to come in, and I thought, right, well, I'm not broken. My system's just it's overactive all the time, and even in stillness. um and coming across the trauma sensitive yoga, that was really where I learned I have to move first, and I have to be experiencing a certain language from someone for my nervous system to let go. And I didn't know that those things needed to all be in place. So from my from my experience, and I understand the theory of it now, my fascial system and my body was moving, but it was being given choice to move in where to move. The movement was slow enough that I could down regulate, but not still where I was getting frustrated. And I pretty much fell asleep in the session that I had with that was trauma sensitive, because it and then I realized it had blindsided me because my nervous system was being calmed. So the mindfulness to me is now any way that we can become present in our body, and if that is through movement, and there are many ways that you can do it, and it's with compassion, and there's a language, whether it's the language we're telling ourselves or the words that we're being advised, all these components need to be in place for you to become present and safe. And then as you progress and you get more attuned with it, of course you can sit on your own and do all those things. They're lovely to experience it, but if your nervous system's not there yet, it can be too much.
That's beautiful. I think that's so enlightening. I never thought of it like that, because myself, from exactly that. And I think so many people I meet, and I've experienced myself, saying be present and be mindful, but it can be the most difficult thing to do if you've been in, as you said, a sort of trauma response, whether your mind starts to go crazy or you get irritated. I've experienced all of that and used to think, what is wrong with me that, I can't do this. So I think that is so helpful. The movement, that's why I started yoga and I started other movement practices, because I found this is the only way I can seem to find some bit of ease, but yet I hadn't connected the dots. So, if someone was feeling, so the work that you do now, say with TRE, maybe we might talk a little bit about some of the modalities you work with. Are they sort of designed to help that process, I suppose, to help people gradually sort of come into that trauma response that you can support them with, and then they can develop a practice from there that they can do themselves? Because we often,
so the TRE is quite a powerful tool you can do that with. But I also did integral eye movement, and the modalities that I started to get thirsty for was ones where we didn't really need to sit and disclose the story of why the thing that happened, and trying to cognitively figure out this process. The learning journey and life experience I've been on, I've been through the talk therapy, and it is wonderful for many people for lots of reasons at many times. But for me, I'd come to the end of the road, and it was really my journey into the body where everything unfolded and was complete, really. So, and then the more I learned about the body, I kind of thought that's going to be my approach. We're just going to go through the body, and the TRE and the eye work and embodiment coaching, yoga, all these. It was just thirsty to find different tools, because different things work for different people. And having an entry where you can come in at different angles to what suits that person, and any way that person can feel safe in, and notice a change happening. So the TRE is one way where you can do that.
And can you talk a little bit about the background of it? I was just very interested. I just, again, having done a session with you, and it just, to me, as you said, there's one, I know there's probably many different modalities and practices, which we can talk about as well, for people to support themselves. But I just found I'd never experienced it, and even the background to it. Can you just talk a little bit about that? I just thought it was so interesting.
Yeah. So TRE stands for tension and trauma release exercises, and it was created by a Dr. David Baselli. Dr. David Baselli has many credentials. He has a PhD in clinical social work, and he's worked in war zones for a couple of decades. And it was his time working in those places where he came across a couple of main observations in human behavior when they're under high stress. And those two observations were, when a human experiences a loud noise, they go into a fetal position. And this, he describes a story where he was with a group of gentlemen, and a mortal shell went off close by, and they all, immediately went down into the fetal position to keep safe. And it was after that he realized he was safe that it struck him. They all did that at the same time. And it almost like it was choreographed, but it wasn't. And that kind of started his interest in what is neurologically happening in the body for for humans to go into that position to allow noise. And the second thing was, he was in a bombing bunker, and he had a child on each of his knees, two small boys, I think. And he had these hands on the backs of on their backs. I think they were facing each other, he describes. And they were physically tremoring and physically shaking. And he looked around the space, and he noticed that children under teenage years were also physically tremoring, the whole bodies uncontrollably. Whereas around the teenage ages, they were kind of going in and out of a shake and then being still. And then the adults, they were still. And so when it was safe for them to leave this space, what he observed then were, he had many light bulb moments. The first one was, he noticed the small children got up and carried on playing and running around like nothing had happened. And whereas the adults were walking around, quite shell-shocked. So he asked one of the adults and said, "Why do you not shake like the children?" And the response he got was, "Because we don't want to make the children think that we're scared." And immediately, yeah, he just thought, we are so socially conditioned to not display our natural response. So there's this negative social connotation to showing a natural shake, because it's, you're deemed less than, or weak, or vulnerable, or sick. And so, yeah, when it was time for him to go back to America, he sought out a neurologist who was a friend of his, who he knew was on similar thought waves to him. And he'd been reading a book called Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And in that book, it's really good. It's really good. And it's a book that talks about, animals come across life-threatening situations in their life numerous times, yet they don't get PTSD and they don't get these diagnoses of. So he came up with 7 exercises to allow the body to generate its own, what they term a neurogenic tremor. And that allows the body to naturally release or discharge stress and tension. And so he came up with this theory that we are genetically encoded to protect and hold ourselves when we come into high stress, but we're also genetically encoded to discharge and shake and release that stress. So yeah, it's a really safe practice that you can, it's under guidance, so you learn how to regulate it yourself. And that's the key thing about this, is it's not about overriding the body in any sense. And yeah, it's a practice that you can bring into your weekly toolkit. Do it 2-3 times a week, or there's lots of adaptations, the ways you can bring it into your life, but having the guidance of a provider to start with, just so it helps you, allow you to come into your body in a safe way, and you can navigate all those natural cognitive battles that the mind has with trying to figure out, what it all means. And there's ways that we can just help people and make it more of a practice.
I must say, it's been, I sort of felt that, but when you started talking about it, I just sort of, it was a big light bulb moment for me as well. And I did a breathwork practice, I dip in and out of it, but in that as well, the guy used to talk about how animals shake off, if they have a fight or something, they shake it off and they move on. And it just strikes me now, listening to you, and there's another doctor I heard talk about this, a Dr. Gabor Mate. A lot of people, you might have heard of him. He works a lot with trauma. And he said himself, he suffers from ADHD, and he talked about ADHD as being a trauma response as well, I think. And it just straight away comes to mind of children in a classroom who can't sit still. That's what I just think of when you're talking, and they're jumping around, and then they've ended up with the diagnosis that there's something wrong with them, when to me, I've always felt, well, yeah, exactly what you've been talking about. The body needs to shake this off. And there isn't something wrong with them, other than there is some sort of stress response going on that this needs to be released. Would that make sense to you, or what do you think of that?
Yeah, 100%. Dr. Mate's work is world renowned, and he's wrote numerous books on different aspects of how trauma comes up and shows in a symptom, whether it's or displays a characteristic behavior, whether it's ADHD, addiction, child behaviors, and but all of the books have that common theme of it's all coming from the same origin of causes. So being allowed to move that trapped energy in as many different formats that we can bring, but ensuring that it's done in a safe environment, and you're really addressing the vagal nerve, and allowing that person to feel safe before they even start the practice. Any practice that allows energy to shift. And Trey is he's worked. Dr. Pacelli has done lots of work with ADHD and things.
Wow. Yeah, it just seems this sort of embodied work just seems to be, I found it in my own life experience, this is the key to sort of learning how to take back your power and how you process your life and past experiences, but just on a day-to-day basis. We are designed, I heard someone say it, we don't process life or live life, we cannot live it from the head up. We're I think we're all just, it's just the systems we've lived in. It's just everything's in the head, and be rational about it. Stop getting emotional. There's all this language that seems to make it be very, oh no, that's not okay. Don't get emotional. And there seems to be, can I just ask you, so there seems to be, I suppose, how we differentiate, say if we're in a situation and something happens and we feel, could be irritated or upset or angry, how we can differentiate whether we're in a trauma response or there's a genuine, no, this isn't okay with me, because I think that can often be, I think so many of us project out our traumas because we haven't known how to process them. But then, there's also a situation where, no, this isn't okay with me. Like, I'm not, the whole boundary. So how can you help in terms of how you decipher, if you're in a situation, what actually is going on in you?
For me personally.
No, or just in general, if how we can help ourselves understand what's happening if we're in a situation, say it could be just a conversation with someone, and someone says something and you start to feel quite, oh my God, or angry, upset. What is really going on here, so that we can, I suppose, understand ourselves better and say, is this legitimately this person, this isn't okay? Or am I overreacting from something in my past?
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it's when we're in them situations, it's really hard to cognitively figure that out. So, the best way is to go through the body, and there are a lot of messages the body can be telling you long before the anger outbursts and the rage or the shutdown. But when you start on this journey, for anyone who's it's unfamiliar to, it's not always easy to detect those early messages. Not that it's a fault to anyone, it's just the way life, this survival adaptation goes. And so I guess the top body reactions where I won't say you're redlining, but you're going into that anger, frustration, that is breath holding, feeling the abdomen go tight, the jaw clenching, the fist tightening, or you're fidgeting, or the eyes are starting to get very hyper focused, and you can't see what's around you. That you're starting to really enter into that to that phase where you're probably not going to be able to come out so quickly. So I guess it's trying to preempt that as much as you can. And if you are in a situation where that's happening, at that time, it's a waste of time trying to figure out why. The aim will be to just remove yourself and allow you to process this somewhere else, or to let off the energy that's building in a space where you can decompress that energy, really. And likewise, the other end of the spectrum, that was what I described as if it's the fight flight reaction, but equally if it's the freeze and shutdown, if you just feel you have nothing in you and there's no energy and you don't want to do anything, it's that real shutdown. That equally is a sign that you've kind of come to a point of it's just too much. And the same principle, take yourself to a space where you can process things a little bit.
It's really to trust the body, isn't it? Is it, in those situations, that's really useful, those signals. I think I can identify with all of them at some stage, but it's just to know, yeah, sometimes it is just to remove yourself, isn't it? Until you can, and I love you mentioned at the beginning, even just to talk a little bit more about what practices, like lots of other things people can do. So as you said, if you need to take yourself away, and we often say go out into nature, or what sort of other practices would you recommend people to do in those sort of situations when they do take themselves away? How can they sort of let off this excess energy that might be coming up, or trauma for release?
There are, when I work with clients, this is kind of the 101, your ABC of on that really micro level, It's teaching them how they can get into the nervous system quickly.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, being in nature is an amazing one, because you've just got that energy that you can't see, and it's just happening. We don't need to know the why, it just happens. So just getting out is definitely that one thing. But something you can have control over is, if you can remove yourself from the space, or even if, you know, worst case you can't, really bringing your attention to finding the edges of your body, as in, where am I now? That might sound really strange, because you think, well, yeah, I'm in this room and I'm talking to this person, but no, where are my feet? Can I find my feet? Can I feel the ground? Can I feel my, you know, my spine, my clothes on my body? And then the next thing is my breath. Can I find my breath where it is? And there's no need to change the breath. You know, a lot of people, when as soon as you say breath, they take an inhale or make a change, but we're really not wanting to change anything. We're really just finding where we are in that moment, finding where the breath is. If you're holding, then you're holding. If you're clenching, then you're clenching. And we are just greeting it where it is in that moment. Because just by greeting it without judgment, then allows the body to soften. So if you can do these things without judgment, it's trusting the process. The nervous system picks up on that lack of judgment, and
Okay.
starts to do its
Isn't that
thing.
amazing? Isn't that amazing, though, that the
Yeah,
nervous system picks up on
yeah,
not being judged and will just, I mean, it's just by putting, I
yeah,
noticed that with craniosacral therapy as well. I found it so powerful just by observation. But isn't that the whole thing in, isn't that the
yeah,
observer effect they talk about? Is it in physics? Just by putting your
yeah.
attention on something changes it. I mean, that's,
100%.
yeah,
100%. So powerful, so
so
powerful.
powerful.
And then
Yeah.
the last thing you can do is, you know, using the eyes. The eyes are really, really impactful. And if you are not in a situation where you can even move, you know, it's not always available to people. Just by moving your eyes around your environment, um, and just observing what you see without judgment again, noticing what's there, just immediately brings the brain into the present moment. Um, and they sound so micro, these actions. And when you know, when I first started, I thought, really, you know, like, because our brains are so busy and used to doing big things. This seemed so little, but this really is the foundational, where the nervous system really, you know, is being listened to and nurtured. Um, and that non-judgment, yeah, I know, Dr. Gabor Mate, that's is the principle of his practice, that he teaches the compassion,
Mm.
kind of, it's all about that non-judgment and being compassionate
Isn't it?
to self and others.
Isn't that a
Um,
big because I think we often do that. We get at, we get angry with ourselves or our body. And I've heard that even people say, oh, my body let me down. And I always instinctively felt, no, it's not, even when I had cancer myself, I never felt that. I felt it's no, listen, I need to listen to my body, not have a
mm,
fight with me. The body, that's another book. I think the body keeps the score. The body keeps the score when the body says no. And there's been so much worked and written about this, and it definitely made sense to me that once you start to work with your body is trying to, not trying to, it's just responding, I suppose, isn't it, in, and show you maybe where you need to rebalance, or it's just a physical reaction to whatever stress or is coming up on you that it needs to process, because we're in our bodies. I think this is something that we just, compared to, like, if you look at ancient civilizations, or years ago. I just feel, I don't know what you feel, but this is sort of a bit of a swing around, not to another topic, but this idea that we're coming back more to ancient ways in a new way. That's my
Mm.
feeling a lot now. We're being brought back, whether we like it. We've been out of balance for years, and we have lived in a very patriarchal system, and we've Mother Earth, and it just feels like those energies are sort of coming back up, telling us, that we need to yeah, more physically embody and balance the body mind, I suppose. Have you
Yeah, definitely. It's and just with you saying that, and it links with something you said earlier as well, that this body that because it's wholeness. And Peter Shepherd, for anyone who's not familiar with Peter Shepherd, wrote the book Radical Wholeness.
okay.
And that's a pivotal book for many people, and really talks to this intuitive kind of, yeah, the wholeness that we are. And the many examples that he gives on his travels is he came across a lot of indigenous people, and many of them could describe what was going on in the world, and they're not even living in the Western world. They kind of got this felt sense. Um,
Mm.
it's because they're in their bodies, and they're close with nature all the time, and some of them could really describe what goes on in nature, and not have even witnessed some of it, because it's this felt sense from the body. So yeah, he speaks to that really, really well.
That sounds wonderful. Actually, that book, Radical Wholeness, I have heard of it before, and I'm actually going to get my hands on it now that you say, because that
Mm.
brings me to, that just reminds me as well when you say that often in terms of doing this work, let's say, or learning more about trauma and embodying and how to release, like the benefits of doing it. And one thing that has always struck me in my own life is that once I started to understand, and it sort of happened spontaneously, I suppose a time comes for each of us where maybe our body is, we've just suppressed so much, or we've been in such patterning that it eventually is going to come out in illness or something in our lives. And although it can be quite challenging, as you said, it's to say to someone even, well, just do a mindfulness course and become present and you'll be fine. When you have all of this, in your body, it's very difficult to do. But the benefit I found when I started to get help, because I had to get help, and like you, I went through talk therapy, and then I got into other things, and then I started to learn about embodiment, and I'm still on that journey. Was just for anyone listening who may be feeling a lot of trauma or a lot of not understanding, I just finding it very difficult to be in my life, and I get very overwhelmed. The other side of that, what I started to notice was my intuition. Just going back to what you said there, my intuition really started to come alive. I think the other side of trauma is I suppose, just to get to the, where that can lead us in our lives, is to being very empowered. But really, like what
Mhm.
you're describing with those people, it just feels to me that is, if we want to talk about what's happening, again, I just get your views on this in terms of what's happening in the planet on a larger scale, this sort of greater awakening of, I think, the great awakening, if we want, I call it, on many levels. There's so many levels to it, but there's a great awakening within us, isn't there, to
Yeah.
firstly who we are. That has to start there, doesn't it? And it just seems so powerful that this is a key, such a gift. The other side of doing this work is the intuition. And can you talk a bit about that? Because that has to be something you've seen in your own life as well from doing this work, Charlotte.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's when all your dots are connecting, really. And I guess initially, whether if you know what's going on in the world or not, you don't need to know if
Mm.
you're on a journey of wanting to tune into this, I guess, divine wisdom that we've all got. And but up until, I guess 3-4 years ago, I didn't realize that, it was intentionally being held back. I just thought, oh, maybe it's just not been my path, and I'm not in a community where, that's maybe not for me. And but even though I was on this search for it through health, and trying to figure out, connect my own dots, it this this intuitive wisdom that we've all got, once you start sitting with embodiment, and kind of coming into the body, um, you're really tapping into, allowing the body to self heal itself. um,
Mm.
it 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 really has the capability to do that. And I've witnessed over, 20 years now that once you create an environment for the body um, to kind of feel calm and safe, and that comes from not only nervous system work, but, so that all the systems can work together. You're detoxing properly, being able to take on nutrients, and we are respecting the systems of the body on a natural level. It can work it all out quite fine. Um, but it's just,
Mm.
finding the right people and the right resources. So basically, I guess it's, to me, my work is providing people with a map, so they have the information that they can learn this, and they can figure it out for themselves. And it's not that you're testing them, it's just that you watch this unfold. When you deliver it in a certain way, you watch people run with it, and they light up, and, I can do this, and this does make sense. And it's just, yeah, wonderful to observe, because it's all in us. um, you
And
know.
isn't that the truth? I mean, I've listened to so many stories of people. I listened to a woman by, I wouldn't say by accident, but I was listening to a podcast yesterday on my walk, and this woman who had horrific back pain and all sort of pain, and she literally had to say to her husband, she said they were due to go to some work event, and she said, I can't. I am literally, she had a car accident, I think, or something years prior, and it was just really affecting her life. And he was saying, this, you cannot live like this. And whatever they did in that moment, I think it was just really coming into that sort of acceptance. She said that it sounded so crazy on one level. I mean, there was obviously a lot of things that had to happen after, but he
Mm.
stopped with her, and they did that EFT, that is it
The tapping.
yes, to
Tapping, yeah.
just get her sort of present and sort of
Yeah.
nearly accept or observe, as you're saying. And she said in that moment, I mean, it sounds hard to me to even believe, she said she did do other things after it, literally that horrific pain, once she was able to get into a place where she could observe and sort of be with it in a safe way, everything, she said, within a few minutes she was bending down to touch her toes. And
Wow.
after she had been on every medication under the sun for years. And I listened to all of it, and she went on to say she never, after that, and obviously there were certain practices like what you're doing, her body went into self-repair mode, and she found a way of, there was a lot of other things to it, but I just thought that is just amazing. Like that body's ability to self
Yeah.
heal is real,
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah.
it?
Oh,
You're just saying that
100%.
is,
Yeah,
you know,
100%. And it's been, evidence all around the world. People with, end life diagnoses of, you hear stories all the time. um but I think from within that, if, the foundation for this to really start allowing, any integration and any healing process to occur, we have to believe that we deserve it. We have to, and for many people that can be an unconscious block. And so
In
there's a
terms
lot
of
of
believing
components.
they deserve to be
Yeah,
well, is it, and healthy?
yeah, yeah. Which comes from kind of, again, that
Mm,
survival adaptation that they've had to endure.
mm.
Society is set up to, you know, to create the perfect environment for people to not believe that. Um, which, I guess this last few years have helped me really kind of go look from afar. Before
Mm.
I thought I was looking at it from a broader perspective of, oh, this is stress and I'm going to do this. And then, yeah, these last 3 years, it's kind of, I feel like you seeing your deck of cards.
I know, I
Like,
know.
okay, we've got this whole field, this pattern, this field of human experience here. Um, so yeah,
We're going through a
that
lot
feeling.
of, aren't we, sort of paradigm shift. It's like I feel every day, and I think everybody's in their own place with this, I suppose. But I like that sense, and maybe that's it. It strikes me, as well as individually, collectively, we often have to be hit by a truck before, things have to get really bad before we have to see certain things in our lives. Maybe it's, yeah, a behaviors or ways that haven't been helpful to us, and sometimes we have to get up against a wall. I had, and the same collectively. So we're starting to
Yeah,
see, um we have to see things that maybe we didn't want to see, I think, for us to move into something really beautiful. I think that's, and it's important, isn't it, to talk about it. I mean, we all, at the end of the day, we all have choice, and as well, we hope we have choice, but that's the hope, that you ultimately have all the information. You make your own choice, that we become empowered and sovereign in our own health, in our lives, isn't that? And that's why I think the work that you're doing is just, um,
yeah, yeah. You speak really well to
so,
that. Actually, that's
mm,
really well put. And I think, and that awareness. Sorry, the choice. Um, but we can't have choice if we're not aware.
mm,
Um, and and that's the principle of embodiment practice. If you're not aware of where you are, or you're aware
mm,
of what options you've got, you can't make a choice to change that body movement. But it's the same in life, in every decision you make. Um,
mm.
to upskill yourself, or read something more about a topic and get curious, because then your choices will start becoming more.
Yeah, and then you get stronger, don't you? With each time, I've
Yeah,
found you make a new choice and you feel very empowered. And sometimes it's difficult. It's a new choice. It's something different, and you start to feel okay. It's like you're building a new muscle. Really,
yeah,
you're sort of going from the
yeah,
very victimy type. That's where I would have been, sort of a disempowered. Oh, I have to hand things over. This is, isn't it, again, how we're often conditioned? And I even did it, and it's no disrespect. There are many good doctors, like everything in life, but handing over your decisions to someone else. I don't care what part of your life it is. It
yeah,
isn't how we're designed to live. Once, you can get advice and you can get support. Um, but I think we always don't. We have to ask, is this bringing me back into my own power as a human being here, with that divine spark in me? There is something greater, how, whatever you want to call that. Um,
mm. Yeah, definitely. And I think
yeah.
that, yeah, what you said there again is, you're giving your power away. But this is, I guess this broad view I'm talking about, that's one component, one part of the component of this kind of indoctrination of that's how people have been uh, trained. I say that in inverted commas, to give their power away, to trust, and to have that expert tell them this is what they have to do and follow these instructions, which, I think in something like emergency medicine, yes, we need that, because
Mm,
and your trauma medicine and things like that,
yes.
you need that ABC
Yeah.
doing, and it's not your decision. But for everything else, it's, anything that creates fear in someone or disempowerment, or is edging towards that approach, yeah, is kind of
I
pushing
love
you
that.
further
Yeah.
away from.
Yeah. If
Mm.
it's pushing you into fear. And just before we'll sort of come to a close soon, but out of all of this work in your own path you've been on, Charlotte, can you maybe just talk about, like, what would you say has been the biggest gift for you? So from going on this your own path, and you went into podiatry, and your life was, out of all of this work, what has, would you say, wow, life changing? And maybe there was some difficulty along the line, or was there something that you'd say was very challenging, and then what you've learned, I suppose, over the years, how that's, yeah, um changed you in a positive way, or transformed? What would you put it down to?
Um, I think all of it really. I'm grateful for every
um,
single moment, um, because it molds you who you are, and what holds me who I am today. And I and that saying is to know is to feel. Um, it's allowed me to feel, um, those moments of, when you're on your knees, and for whatever life is throwing at you, that disillusionment, that vulnerability, the pain, um, the loneliness, and I guess that, where the ego is can't appear because everything's collapsing. Um, and the gift is with that. So there's that felt sense in the body and knowing that vulnerability. So then you have that gift to empathize with others. But then I've also, the gift is being pathologized by the system. That's been quite a gift of witnessing that, I guess this what they call the human disease, the dis-ease, and you're labeled with things. I'm and experiencing now, and the I guess the gift, of experience in how you get put in a box and a label, and how disempowering that is in your healing journey alone, never mind if you've got therapies helping you. But then this last 3 years, to me this is the ultimate gift of life, because now I can see that, I guess I've recontextualized the whole meaning of it, and this compassion to humanity, and to our journey now, individually and collectively. So I'm grateful for every hardship, that's come my way. I've got, hopefully, a little bit of everything um, to draw from, to be able to help others. Not that you're telling your story all the time, but to understand when they're describing their pain or their hurt, or whatever stage of their healing they're at, you recognize it and you empower it, and help
Yeah,
them move to the next step.
yeah, sort of human to human, once we can, yeah, I love that, because in yeah, it's sometimes it is the case. It's always the question, I think, often, do we have to go through, difficult times to
Mm-hmm.
thrive or come out the other side? And I don't know, I suppose it's $1 million question, but it does seem that we are living in a world of, as they say, duality, and light and dark, and good and bad. And how can you know one if you haven't known the other? I suppose, how can you know happiness if you haven't known sadness? Like, it is the human
Mm.
journey. Like, if we don't, that is the basis, as I see it, of the human journey. This, we've come into this sort of duality, maybe to see, and then eventually be able to sort of see, to experience, but also to be able to see it. So that's something similar. And I think if we're taught, I suppose there has to be more conversation around that it's more normalized. Like there's nothing wrong if you're going through a difficult time. In ancient times, again, how the whole grieving, that's another thing, that this whole process of grief was very important, and we didn't really get into that much, but that there is a sort of, I've heard that said something about finding the sweetness in grief. Like there is, in the grief and in their loss, there is sort of something lovely that comes out of that, and we've sort of, I don't know what your feeling is on that. It's like we've sort of pushed that to one side and, oh no, get on with it. I mean, and that's another thing I've often, get on with it, this mantra that it sort of feels important that we, from what you're talking about here, is that we come back and we really start to honor these phases and things in our lives. And, you see that.
That's a lovely way to put it. The sweetness in grief. It obviously at the time it's not, but even being able to sit with your grief or go towards it. There's I always call it the pleasure in grief, because you're allowing yourself to grieve without the shame, without the guilt, that you're less than or not holding it together or weak, or all these unnecessary terms that we carry unconsciously. And for everything that's going to happen, in our future, we don't know what strife and stress and hardship we might face. But knowing, you've got this kind of awareness and kind of, I call it toolkit of your practices or ideas or theories and people's suggestions, and you're more equipped to meet it where it is and find the next learning, the learning piece of knowledge that you can get from your next hardship, because we're forever evolving in this space.
I love that when you say I've been able to meet it, because I think that often is the first, isn't it? Just being able to, to me, it's like, is that the sort of process of alchemy? Nearly that we are alchemists. We can sort of, we process this through us physically. I've just noticed that with grief I have had in my life that I ran from, and when I, through time and support and all of that, managed to meet it, that at some point it is a process. There's waves. I think once we sort of understand, something starts to happen. I can remember feeling something physically starting to shift. And what you talk about there, the pleasure of sort of, obviously it's very painful, but as well, but when you go into the process, I think it's often when the running or the fear of it and not going towards it can often be more painful. That when we are supported and allowed to be in it, it actually moves quite quickly. This is what I found, doesn't it? It actually physically can be, whoop. It was like that woman I listened to yesterday. I was like, wow, and it's, I think when we talk about that more, it can be very supportive, can't it, to others, that, with the right support, this doesn't have to take years. It's often decades of avoiding something that has caused us.
And the body knows when you're avoiding it. It just knows. So it'll keep it safe, and it keeps us protected. It's really good at doing that, which is another reason for even wanting to enter this work, because it will keep everything safe for as long as you want it to, but it will show up some way, in some form. So it has to come out, and I guess by exploring this, you're just getting more choice in how it's coming out, because if you don't, you're not really going to get much choice, and then your efforts, then I guess we are putting our effort into, what do they, you term it, you're dealing with the the disease then.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know, it's been quite a journey, and I think, and just me personally, over these this last year and a half, we emigrated back from Australia back to the UK, and yeah, the gift of I guess when you're talking about the gift of your challenges, deciding to walk away from a career, you know, moving countries, chose to move my child, well, my last child, into home education. So setting up everything completely new. Not, you know, you talk to most people and they go, why would you do that? You know, it's kind of, we've come out of safety, you know, the safety kind of net. But I guess the way we could see the, you know, the world going and what was happening, it's kind of really then following a heart-led life, and walking from your heart. And yes, a lot of things are stripped, and you are on your knees, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So that the body goes into, I don't know if I'm going to be okay. I've pretty much walked that, yeah, on this
Wow.
journey for the last year. And but the gift is that you recognize it's there, and I you kind of know it's not gonna kill me. It's, if I put all my embodiment practice in, this is the ultimate dojo now. I have to embody everything I've learned for this journey to work. And so, yes, I'm still on that journey, but every day, you know, when that feeling comes in, I don't know if it's going to be okay, but okay, it's here again. You know, hello, welcome. What
Hello.
can, yeah,
Yeah.
welcome
Yeah.
to the uncertainty, and yeah, what
Getting used to
can
saying
we,
hello. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Once you
we
welcome it
kind of
in, just
trust.
beware.
Yeah, it's just always there.
Yeah.
And
Won't
yeah,
forget.
and
Mm.
go into your intuition and bringing it all in.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. What a lovely way to sort of finish. I mean, that is it, isn't it? The once you have those, it just, that's such an example of how the benefits of when we start to do this sort of embodiment and trauma work, we then, this is the sort of payoff you sort of feel, I think for many, you know, that you can, yeah, you can face, and you can face day to day. You have everything to live a heart-led life. I love how you say that. I think that is, I read somewhere something about living a heart-led life sort of pays the highest dividends ultimately, however that looks like for you. It'll be different for everyone.
Mm.
But, and I think that is the truth, and you're definitely proof of it, Charlotte. So thank you today just for all your time and wisdom. And just, I had so many light bulb moments listening to you. It's just amazing. I think this is the sort of future of us all in terms of our lives, but particularly our health, because we've nothing without really our health if we don't know how to. And we're living in fear and out of a stress response or fight or flight. I did that for years, and it's just wonderful to be. It's not to say, like you, I'm every day going, hello, oh, here something else comes.
Mm.
But it's equipping yourself, like you said, with all those tools that you've shared. And just before we finish, could you just, seeing as this Wild Woman podcast, and you definitely are, I think anyone who's brave to live their life, you know, fully as themselves. I just love meeting women like that and sharing their story and their challenges, because it doesn't happen without being brave and, you know, overcoming challenge. So how would you define that, living as a wild woman for you? What does that mean?
It's a really good question, and for me, it is coming back to that divine feminine wisdom, and embodying it, and walking the path, bringing it in to my life, and yeah, and the pulling back from the service I was in, because I was still serving people and, you know, doing that in podiatry, and just taking a step back and really sitting into my truth, and then becoming of service again, but living from that truth, and not stepping aside from it anymore, or being influenced or controlled, or, you know, uh, undermined. And not that I want to develop that control at all. It's just living within your power of that heart-centered living. And, you know, so where that intuitive wisdom can, and creativity, softness, but also, you know, your own leadership, and bringing the healthy masculine in as well. You know, that kind of, to me, is wild woman.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. That's a gorgeous answer. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So thank you. I've taken a lot of your time today and I'm very grateful. For anyone who would like to get in touch with you, find out more about the work that you do, and I, just to share with the audience as well, I took part in one of, I'll be doing more Charlotte's online groups, sort of group-led TRE work as well. And it's a fabulous way of just developing the practice for yourself. So it's another tool in your toolbox. And then you also work one-on-one as well with clients, don't you, as well as in groups?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
how can people best get in? I'll put it all in the description box as well, but how can people get in touch with you?
So I have a website and a Facebook page. I am on Instagram, but I don't really and kind of go too much on there. I am, I guess, with this whole social media thing, it is, and I know you have to be out there, but from an embodiment sense, you kind of like, it is the, you know, the whole dopamine rich fight flight platform. So I'm working with myself to get more out there. But for now, yeah, my Facebook and website is
What's the website name, did you say?
The website is embraceflow.co.uk, and
Lovely.
the same, the Facebook is Embrace Flow.
Lovely. I love that.
So.
But I love that, even what you say about the social media, because it is that sort of, yeah, with all of these things, we have to, I suppose it's how we use them and why we use them as well. But it's, yeah, it's,
And I use it myself, you know, and
yeah,
but it is I'm just
yeah,
aware, aware
yeah, that's
of
it,
that.
isn't it? To bring in that awareness if you find yourself feeling quite stressed or sort of whatever when you're doing that, it's be present again.
And thank you, Celine, for this opportunity. It's been a lovely conversation, and the work that you're doing, and you're kind of, the way that you, use of words and language, and how your wisdom's coming through on this platform is a gift. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we're both, I'll finish just by saying this because I can't sort of resist, but I won't say too much. But both of us hopefully are getting, in different ways, getting involved in a new sort of natural health initiative, which is maybe a little too early to talk too much about, but just watch the space. We'll be sharing more in the future. So on that
Yeah.
intriguing note, we'll we'll finish and make sure, as I said, I'll put all of Charlotte's details in the description box. And thank you everyone for your time. And thank you so much, Charlotte. It's been a pleasure to get to meet you and get to know you. Thank you.